Alright, welcome back. This will be our second video tutorial talking about layers. Okay, let's go back to the photograph here. You might notice that when I jump from layers, if I'm on my move tool where I type my V, and if I want to go to certain layers, I just simply hold my command key down and I click on whatever I want to, or whichever layer I want to go to. So if I want to go to the seed or the sprout here, I'll click on that and it jumps down to sprout 3. If I have these layers labeled like sprout 1, 2, 3, 4, I might forget which one is which one. So if I click on these, it'll hop to that layer. If I want to know what layer she is on, I'll click there. This one, hold my command key down, click here. And I can kind of just bounce through all these different layers. So I'm on this layer over here, and I want to reduce her opacity. That's what I can do up here in the opacity bar, is I can simply click here and I can use this slider, or what's even faster is if I just hover over the opacity slider, you see I get the little hand tool with 2 arrows, and I can just drag and I can reduce the opacity, or what we call this in the painting world is we're adding white to it, or whatever the background is, we're tinting it here. So I can tint it down and it gives me a %. So if I wanted to ghost something in the background, I could do it this way. And the nice thing about this is on this layer, the opacity stays at 34%. And down the road, in a day or two, if I want to change it, I can always go back and increase the opacity so it's back to 100%. I can also change the blend modes here right next to it. Right now it's normal, and you see that Photoshop has a whole bunch of blend modes that it's common throughout a whole bunch of tools, and I like that it's similar through and consistent through all the different tools. Let me show you where this is helpful sometimes. If I want to duplicate this layer and make 2 of her, I'm going to again grab this, drag this down to duplicate layer, and now I have 2 layers of her. You can see her behind me here. So they're on top of each other. That really doesn't have any effect on my file right now because one's just covering the other one. However, if I go to the first one and I set the blend mode to say multiply, watch how she will get darker. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking all the pixels on top of her and saying wherever it overlaps pixels underneath, double up on that and make it darker, more vibrant. And I have used this before. Now, this we don't need to use it as much here, but if I have a file, or let's just say I have these plants over here, and I want to make them just a little bit more green, I might double up on these, on this sprout, and make that multiply, and you'll see that it gets to be a nice rich green without really having to do anything as far as color correcting in Camera Raw or adjusting it. I can just double up and it really saturates that green and it looks like a much healthier plant. And then if I want, I can keep these together. If I turn it off, that's what the original looks like. I can just take both of these and I can merge these layers together. Now this is destructive, meaning that it's going to merge these together and I won't have the individual layers anymore. But if I merge them together, now this is one layer, and that is the new kind of vibrant green, rich green sprout. So there's a bunch of different types of blending modes in here. You can go through them. Some will lighten, some will do. I will just let you kind of go through and play with them because that's usually what you want to do anyway when you're working with an image. But that multiply is one that I use probably the most often. Now, if I didn't want to multiply her quite as much, let's jump back to her. I could take the top one, and even though I have it on multiply, on just the top one, I could reduce the opacity. And you can see that she's much more saturated. Let's just take this down to maybe like 30%. I've increased the saturation on her. Looking at this, it looks pretty good just by doubling it, adding another layer, putting that layer on multiply, but then reducing the opacity. So I'm really only adding about 30% gain to the pixels in the first layer, but it looks nice. So one more thing I want to show you before we end just kind of the basic tutorial of layers is, let me get rid of this layer here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. And well, actually I'm going to draw just, I'm going to get my lasso tool up here, and I'm going to just draw a crazy shape. So now I've made a selection, and I'm going to create a new layer by going down here to click right next to the trash can to create a new layer. And on this layer, I want to fill this with a color. Let's just say I want to fill this with, let's pick a color. Let's go up here and choose a pink. Okay, oh, I see I'm out of gamut. I'm going to click here to get a pink that'll work well. And now I'm going to quick fill this on this layer. So my selection is made. I have marching ants. I have a separate new layer selected. And now if you remember from past tutorials, the quick fill keys, quick fill to fill this shape with the foreground color is Option Delete. Okay, and you'll see that I still had my feather on my lasso tool, which is okay. We just have a feathered edge. But now I'm going to move this little girl's photo in front of that shape. And I want to put her photograph inside of this shape. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hover between the two layers, and I'm going to hold down my Option key. And notice I get the little icon that shows it's going to paste that top layer inside of it. You could also call this a clipping mask. I click once, and you can see that it scoots that layer over and puts the little arrow there showing that it's inside of here. So now this picture is inside of it. What's really cool is whatever you've done to this shape, this pink shape, see how I have the blur here? It has applied that blur to the photograph. So it is inside of there. And this is fully editable. So if I go back to my move tool and I stay on just this layer, I can move this layer around inside here. If I wanted to, I can Command T. I could transform it inside of here and do pretty much whatever I want. If I ever wanted it to come back out, I simply hover between those two layers, hold my Option key out or down, and click again, and it will remove it. So it's a nice feature. I always refer to it as the paste inside. I think it's actually called the clipping mask tool or create a clipping mask, but you've probably seen a lot of postcards that have type on them and a picture inside of the type. That's how they're doing that. So thank you very much. This is a quick tutorial into layers and the basics of layers, which I think will help get you started as we continue to add more of these pieces to our magazine cover and use layers to put them in their right spot. Thank you.